Okay, so before we start reading this next section, I want you to take a minute and take a look at this picture. Okay, there's a few things that we can notice if we are close reading this image. One, we see definitely some men sitting down in what looks like, uniforms that are brown with maybe some blue on them. But if you look closely, you'll notice that they don't have any shoes on. Their clothes are really torn. They look kind of dirty. Okay. And even we have African American here too, who's carrying some kind of gun or weapon. But look at their uniforms; they just look really filthy. Okay. No, they didn't have any wash machines back then, but maybe this section may be about kind of what they were wearing or what life was like. It has a caption here, and it says, "Union soldiers wore blue uniforms, while the uniforms of Confederate troops were gray." Okay, so maybe this is a Union soldier. Union soldiers watching over the Confederate soldiers, so two different groups. This section is called tattered uniforms. I'm not really sure what the word tattered means, so I'm going to think about that. But I know a uniform is something you wear, and I know they're wearing uniforms. So as I'm reading this, I'm going to think about what the word tattered means to help me better understand my reading. How would you like to go to school wearing a scratchy jacket, tattered pants, and worn shoes? That's just what Civil War soldiers wore, whether they were marching, fighting, eating, or sleeping. Uniforms for both sides were often in short supply. In the South, the government didn't make enough uniforms for all the soldiers. Confederate soldiers wore their regular clothes and parts of Army uniforms. Union soldiers were itchy all over thanks to the uniforms made of rough, scratchy fabrics. Soldiers had no coats, gloves, or hats to protect them during the winter. Soldiers' uniforms quickly looked like dirty rags. Can you picture that? That definitely is a good simile to use here. Uniforms became stiff and stinky from sweat. Jackets and pants were ripped, dirty, and spotted with blood. Uniforms were rarely washed. Underwear? Soldiers didn't change or wash their underwear for months at a time. Soldiers seldom received replacement clothing, so they took jackets, pants, or boots off the dead. Socks protected a soldier's feet, but a soldier's socks went unwashed for weeks or months. They soon became stiff and filled with germs. As the war dragged on, soldiers wore their boots with bare feet. When boots wore out, soldiers wrapped their feet in rags and kept on marching. Well, that definitely tells me that they were determined to fight the war they were fighting in, to continue marching even when their shoes were torn and destroyed. Just wrapped their feet in rags. This is a different image. We haven't seen what looks like nighttime, but look at where these soldiers are sleeping. I mean, I'm hoping they're sleeping. I hope they're not dead. But I think this may be where they're sleeping. So you got one man kind of looking over watch. You would think that soldiers would have tents to sleep in or shelters. It doesn't look like it here. Doesn't look very safe. It also kind of looks like it may be winter or fall. Probably winter now because it looks like snow on the ground and the leaves are gone from the trees. There's a foul fact. I love the words this author uses here. Foul fact. It could have just said, here's a fact. But foul is usually a negative word. Some soldiers slept in open air beds made by piling hay or straw between two logs. Could you imagine sleeping on hay or straw after a long day of battling? There's also a caption here. Civil War soldiers spent many cold nights sleeping outdoors on the ground. Okay, so this section here is titled Hard Ground wet bedrolls. Hard ground, wet bedrolls. Sleeping outside might sound like fun to you, but for Civil War soldiers, it was miserable. Little protected them from rain, snow, or summer heat. Even less protected them from pesky mosquitoes and body lice. Mosquitoes buzzed and bit all night long. Lice infested soldiers' bedrolls, clothing, beards, and hair. Lucky soldiers slept in canvas tents with dirt floors. Other soldiers slept on the ground, on bedrolls. These blankets were rolled up and carried on the soldiers' backs while they marched. If the ground was wet, or if rain fell at night, bedrolls became soggy and muddy. Crowded, filthy living quarters were great for bacteria and germs. Diarrhea was a common complaint for soldiers. They also suffered from pneumonia, typhoid, cholera, and tuberculosis. This next section is titled Teeth Dullers. Take a minute to predict. What do you think this section might be about? There's some great images here. This first one here is a primary source. It's actually what hardtack would be. It's labeled hardtack. From the image, it looks like that might be what he's eating. Kind of looks like a very old graham cracker or stale cracker. There's a vocabulary word here called dysentery. It says a sometimes deadly infection of the intestines that causes diarrhea. Don't think that's something I want. Then this image here, again, we can see the gentleman's tattered clothes, his torn pants. Must be a Union soldier because he's wearing blue. Look at his shoes. I don't know if you can see that very closely, but doesn't even have any tops on his shoes, and he's walking through the snow this way. Think school lunches are bad? Try dining on stale, moldy crackers day after day. Hoping for some meat with your meal? Look closer at the crackers. Those small specks are maggots. Sound disgusting? Maybe so. But hardtack crackers were standard food for Civil War soldiers. So maggots are like baby insects, often like flies, just those little white maggots you see, and they're just on there, and they're eating them. Hardtack was made from flour, salt, and water. It was light and easy to carry. The salt in hardtack helped soldiers to sweat, which kept them from fainting in the heat. Hardtack crackers were called teeth dullers and iron plate biscuits because they were so hard. Worm Castle was another name for hardtack because it was often full of weevils and maggots. Some soldiers dipped their hardtack in hot coffee to soften it and kill the worms. Others went ahead and ate the worms. Meat was scarce for soldiers, depending on what was available. Soldiers ate the meat of cows, horses, mules, and even rats. Salt helped preserve meat, but often the meat was rotten. A diet of hardtack and salted meat left soldiers constantly thirsty. The water they drank came from nearby streams, ponds, and lakes. Drinking dirty water caused soldiers to develop dysentery and other diseases. All right, this next section, I'm going to show you the images so you can get an idea. The title is called On the March. We'll stop there for today.